Okay, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining. This is Exploratory Online Seminar number 53. This time, I'd like to present Exploratory X Google BigQuery. Basically, like what you can do or how you can get the data from Google BigQuery in Exploratory. And once you get the data, what you can do in Exploratory. Kind of stuff. Okay, and let me introduce myself. My name is Kan Nishida, CEO at Exploratory. We started Exploratory in the spring 2016 to democratize data science. Since then, we've been building Exploratory over the last 5 years, making easy to access various data science methods and technologies. To understand your own data. Prior to starting Exploratory, I used to be working at Oracle, being as a development director, taking care of or building various data science related products. Okay. And then when we say the data science, we mean usually the data science workflow starts with business questions and you want to answer the questions with data. So you access the data and the data, you transform and clean up the data so that you can visualize or you can analyze. So you can go through this sort of like workflow in any order, any combinations, and until you find useful insights that will help you answer the business questions. Most of the time, like you don't work by yourself, like you work with others. So it's important to communicate your insights or whatever the finding you got from the data with others. So you do this communication piece. And then Exploratory makes it easy, provides a more than simple UI to do these 5 things. So like data access, data wrangling, visualization, and analytics, and last but not least is the communication via dashboard, note, and slides. Okay, so enough about myself and Exploratory. Let's get started. So Exploratory Online Seminar number 53, Exploratory X Google BigQuery. Again, this is about how you can configure and then get the data from Google BigQuery, and then what you can do with that data in Exploratory. And to show you, I set up these 8 steps for today's. So starting from create a connection to BigQuery to ending with running a SQL query or against a BigQuery at the Exploratory server. Okay, so let's start with the very basic. I'm gonna go through kind of a live demo. So I open the project. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I wanna connect to the Google BigQuery. So Google BigQuery can be found under the database data menu. And then when you click on this, you have a bunch of database connection, and one of them is called Google BigQuery. And if you haven't used BigQuery in the Exploratory, when you click on this, the first thing you're going to see is the authorization dialog. My case, this environment, I have already authorized, therefore like I don't see it. If you haven't, then you're going to see the UI dialog like this. So this is the access permission setup, and then you want to grant permission to Exploratory so that the Exploratory can get the data from the Google BigQuery on behalf of you. So when you click on the grant permission button, and then this will open the web browser. And in the web browser, you might be familiar with that, Google OAuth UI. And then like you click on the allow button to allow the Exploratory to access to your project in BigQuery. And then that's done. Then once that's done, like you come back to Exploratory and click on the sync button so that is synchronized between the auth side at the server and the Exploratory. And once that's done, and that means it stores the auth token in your environment, in your Exploratory desktop environment. Precisely is the file system in Exploratory's repository. Okay, and then you're ready to start running the query. 2 things. One thing though, before going, I wanted to make a note on this. So there are two ways to import the data. So you write a SQL query, right? And then you let the BigQuery to process that query part of it. And once that's done, it's that query executed as a BigQuery. And then you want to put that data from the BigQuery back into the Exploratory. That time, you have two options. One is a direct import or stream. This is a very common. Most of the time you do this. And then any other database, this is the only option. But for Google BigQuery, there's another option. It's called import via Google Cloud Storage. Okay, so when you write a SQL query and then you get the data, right? And then at the bottom, that's the data like you're seeing. However, this is the data. It's kind of like only the 100 rows or whatever, kind of like a subset of the rows you download. And then you want to download the whole data. Can be 100,000 rows or 1 million records and so on. And then when you click on the left-hand side, it can be the first time it's called save or update. That's a direct import. But there's another button, the Google Cloud via Google Cloud Storage. Okay, and when you so I'm going to explain real quick. So direct import is like the bottom is Exploratory, and then you run a SQL query, right? Like pass kind of like submit a SQL query to the BigQuery, have BigQuery run it, and get the data. You download the data in a streaming way, much like you stream the YouTube video in the same thing. Okay, so that's very typical case scenario. Another case is this import via Google Cloud Storage. Right. So that case, you submit a SQL query to the BigQuery. That part is the same. But after that, when you click on that button, then what it's going to happen is ask BigQuery to push the data to the Google Cloud Storage. That is your cloud storage, by the way. And then press up, hold that data. And at that time, what's going to happen is it compresses the data. And then the compressed data is the one that you actually download. It's much like, imagine like you have the CSV data on Google Drive or like some remote server or something. You just download in that CSV. And then you import that CSV data into the Exploratory, your project. So this has an advantage when you have like, let's say, the huge data. Like let's say, like for example, like our experience is kind of when you start exceeding like about 500,000 rows or 1 million row, about like 100 megabyte of the data that return from your query, and at that point, instead of streaming, it's better to just download from the Google storage because it's compressed data. So therefore, if it's 100 megabyte data, it can be like compressed to like, let's say like 10 megabyte or something. So much faster. And also it's scalable. If it's streaming the bigger data, it's not only slow, sometimes maybe like some kind of connection might get time out, depends on your internet speed. So it depends on the data size. Okay, and to use this import via Google Cloud Storage, you got to do some kind of initial setting. And first, obviously, you got to create that bucket and then at the Google Cloud Storage, and then register the bucket in the Exploratory, which bucket you want to use for this import via Google Cloud Storage. Okay, and then let me just open that Google BigQuery UI. So this is a Google BigQuery console. If you're a BigQuery user, this is where you write a SQL query, you get the data, right? If you go to this menu, navigation menu, and you scroll down, and then there is, where is that? I thought Google Cloud Storage. Here you go. There's under the storage area, there's a Google Storage area, storage. And then you select on this, and then you open the Google Storage UI. This is where you can create a bucket if you don't have it. If you already have it, then you can register that you can use it, or you want to create a new one and click on this button. And once you create the Google Storage, I already created Exploratory_data. Then you can register it. So how you do that? Here from this menu, and there's a Google BigQuery. And then this will open that kind of initial setting, right? So this is like my Google kind of default project, and then there's a bucket. This is where you want to select your bucket. So when you open this dialog, it queries from your Google Cloud Storage. So whatever the bucket you already created, it should be listed here. Okay. And then once that's done, then you can write a SQL query. By the way, if you're fine with, you write a SQL query to, like kind of minimize the data, and you never have to worry about like downloading like like 500 megabyte of data or anything like that. Then you don't even have to do this setting. Like forget about it. But if you have to download the bigger data, then this is what you need to set do the setting. Okay, so go back to the BigQuery. I think next topic is get data with SQL query. Okay, so let's start. So to do under the project, so you select your project, and then you want to select your data set. For this demo, I want to use this public data. So like Google BigQuery lists all those tons of public data for exercise, or it's just kind of a curiosity, right? So under the public data, and there are a bunch of data set. And then this time, I like to use there's Google provide this COVID-19 Google Mobility. So they have Google Map, and then they collect tons of data from us, right? And then based on that, they basically monitor our sort of like people's movement. And then they started tracking this since the beginning of this COVID-19 to track how much like people are moving, right? So because pretty much all over the world did a shutdown or lockdown kind of stuff, and then we're still doing some part of the world. So people stop moving, right? I mean, like start slowing down. So that information being captured by the Google, and they publish it. Of course, it's anonymized. It's kind of like a country level or state level and stuff, but you can access to that data. So I'm going to use this one for this demo. And then underneath this data set, there's only one table. And then there are these columns. So I'm going to click on this table name to copy and paste this, populate this basic SQL query. And then I want to do is I can click on this run button to see like what kind of data is there. And then once that's done, this is maybe a little bit bigger data. It might take some time. So while I'm waiting, I'm gonna start where clause for the next step, and then here's a subregion _1. So this one, this is a country region, region code and region. This is like a name. So I want to query for this only for the Japan, where the Olympic is going on right now. So country, region, and code, and then type, maybe JP. And this is going to query only Japan data. And by the way, so this is where it shows like what's the size of the data. So like if, for example, in this case, I think this data is like 668 megabyte of data. And then so BigQuery just processed it at the server, BigQuery server. And then the data returned by the Google BigQuery is actually 2.67 megabytes. So this is how much of the data. So this kind of size, you don't even worry about using Google Cloud Storage. You can click on the Save button to download that whole data. So what is the whole data? So here, what you are seeing in this preview area is actually only 100 rows. This is a kind of preview. But the actual data is 25,248 rows. And out of that, only 100 rows downloaded into Exploratory, kind of like a temporary, and then that's what you're seeing. Okay, and if I click on this Save button, what is going to happen is it's going to submit another query. Another query, and then in this case, it doesn't have to process because it's already been processed. So it's going to simply just download 25,248 rows from the Google BigQuery to the Exploratory in a stream format. Okay, and then I can start adding another maybe parameter. So query condition. So let's say I have like a subregion _1. So what are the subregion _1? It seems like this is there's an NA. So in SQL, we don't call NA, it's actually called new. So I want to query only like, not the NA. I think NA is probably the country level, but I want to query at sub-region level. In the case, Japan is a prefecture. It's kind of like a state in the United States. Okay, so got it. So it's like a alphabet characters of the each prefecture name, and then like I want to say maybe another one. So sub-region _1 is in maybe Tokyo, what's going on in Tokyo, and as a comparison, like I want to query also Kyoto. So let's query for those two cities. And I'm assuming I would expect like this number of rows is going to become even smaller. So it's only like 1,052 rows now. And then this point, if I feel like I'm cool with it, and then like I can click on the save button to download that data. So I'm going to query this is a mobility and in Japan, and then click on the create button. And I create this new data frame. Before this session, I was playing around with Japan mobility, so it's kind of like confusing. But this mobility _ Japan is the one I created. Okay, and I see this here is sub-region, Kyoto, Tokyo, so only 2 regions data being downloaded from BigQuery. And also when I see here date column, this is a summary view that shows you the summary information for each column, right? And then these charts are automatically generated, and then all these metrics are also automatically calculated for each column. And here I see 2020 February 15 to 2021 July 24th. So this is the range of that data. Okay, and I think this is 2020 February 15 is that I think kind of a benchmark date. So compared to that traffic or the movement on that day, how much increase or decrease of the movement, and then what kind of movement are we talking about? So this is where these metrics are coming from. So this is, for example, retail and recreation % change. So this means whatever the people moving around for like a retail, like a shops and restaurants probably. And then here is a grocery and a pharmacy. And then it's kind of interesting thing here though, it's like when you look at here, retail and recreation. So median is -21 and mean is -21. So it's overall, I think, traffic went down, right? Like zero is no change from the last year in the February, but if traffic went down, the movement went down overall. And then here, when you see the grocery, this is like a median is 0, mean is -1. So it's not really went down. And then when you think about it, it's of course, right? I mean, like people don't stop going to the grocery, and it's considered essential business. So therefore, probably not much. But then like when you see, for example, transit, it's like -31, -32, that's the median. So, and even like a max is 3. So pretty much transit, America is, I'm not sure, but like in Japan, like many people use public train and then what else? The bus. So though I guess the people stop using those because people don't really go that far or something, or people working from home. So that's kind of interesting. And the same thing for the workplace as well. All right, so this is summary information. And then from here, once you get the data, then you want to visualize or you want to analyze with analytics. So let's start with creating charts, right? So here I have the date column. I can go to the chart view and start creating the chart from scratch, or I can click on this chart button. And this is kind of like an instant way to create a kind of initial chart to start with. I'm going to hide the left-hand side. Okay, so what's happening here is a date column is assigned to x-axis, and then right now it's aggregated by months. I want to change that to date level. Oh my goodness, what is going on? And then so right now, like all the bars are equal height. Why? Because this is showing the number of rows, and then each day has 2 rows. Like one is Tokyo, another is Kyoto. I want to show this retail recreation percent change from the baseline. Baseline is February, I forgot, but February 15 in 2020. So I'm going to select this, and then its sum is okay because I know each day has its, there's only one row, but I'm going to make sure just an average of each day of each prefecture. So this is what we got. And then, so basically, whenever you see that this bar is going negative, so 0 is here, that means compared to the initial day, the traffic or the movement went down or decreased. Okay. And then this is, we took a timeline data, time series data. So like I'm gonna switch to the line chart to make it easier to see the trend, going up or going down kind of stuff. And it's so, okay, so, and then now I'm going to use a color to separate this line to two groups, in this case, in Tokyo and Kyoto. So I'm going to select the subregion 1. So now basically like I'm looking at Tokyo and then Kyoto, and then comparing those two prefectures in terms of the movement for retail and recreation. Okay. And then this one is a day-by-day basis, and then it's kind of hard to track. Like it's really going up and going down, and then each day sometimes it's going jump, and then next day it's going down or something like that. So I want to see like overall trend, and in that case you want to use a menu y-axis. And then there's window calculation. Under the quick window calculation, there are these menus, kind of like a shortcut. If you want to go more detail, you can go to the window calculation. This time, I want to select this moving average under the quick window calculation. The default is 7. I can click on this green text, and then I change the configuration. But I'm fine with this default setting. This 7 means 7, and then right now the unit is day. The time axis unit is day. So 7 days average. That's what we are seeing. Think of it as like an original line chart was kind of going up and down, super zigzag, and then they make it smoother because each day is an average of the previous 7 days. Okay, so now I can clearly see the Kyoto and the Tokyo. Looks like both prefectures, the movement went down, decreased. However, the amount of like decrease is much higher in Tokyo than the Kyoto. And especially these days, like maybe like this month, Kyoto is quickly coming back. So like retail business, maybe like restaurants and so on, going back to normal compared to the February. So I'm not sure that it's even normal. But compared to Tokyo, that's where Olympic is going on, and it's still, pace is kind of slow to go back. Okay. So this is like a moving average. Another thing I like to create, I want to create one more chart. Let's say like a bar chart. And then like I want to see which regions actually have kind of a slowdown compared to others, or went back to normal compared to others. So I want to assign the subregion 1 right now, the Kyoto and Tokyo, and then y-axis is the retail, and then I want to make it to the average. Right now, what we are looking here is only Kyoto and Tokyo, but average of throughout, like this, like maybe like a year and a half, right? Already average. But I want to see like this month, this July, or maybe like last 30 days, either way. So I can use a filter and then select the date, and then operators. I'm gonna select this like a relative dates. Okay, and this relative date is cool because I can select the month and then say this month or something. And then that will show then if I click run button, then that will show the average percent change of the retail for this month, which means this July. Or if you want to do like last 30 days, I can do like select the day, and then this one is the last N days, and then I can just tap like last 30 days and then run. So this is the average of last 30 days of Kyoto and Tokyo. So obviously, so again, the much more decrease in Tokyo compared to Kyoto. I have only 2 regions. I'm going to start adding more regions later, but we have now 2 regions here. Okay. So now, so we have created two charts. Oh, another thing, just wanted to point out, cool features I want to introduce. So there is a, let's say like I want to bring those grocery. You remember like a grocery, like we don't really see much down decrease, right? So I want to compare with to it. So I can assign grocery here and then change that to this one too. It's like a mean. And then right now, the Kyoto has two measures and then or two metrics, and then Tokyo also has two metrics. This kind of got confusing. Yeah, I can do like a side by side. This might be easier. But another cool thing is I can separate each metric or variable in this case or column into a separate chart. So I want to have like one chart that shows retail recreation, another chart to just show grocery and pharmacy. That is here repeat by. I can use this each y-axis, and then when I select it, now left-hand side is showing the retail and then comparing Kyoto and Tokyo. Right-hand side for the grocery and pharmacy and comparing Kyoto and Tokyo. And if I click on the y-axis to sync y-axis, so now it just synchronized the y-axis. So both of them, it's kind of easy to compare. It's obviously right-hand side, which is showing the grocery, that movement. That both even Tokyo has already came back as original day, which is like February last year. But for the retail and recreation, still you can see a huge decrease compared to February last year. Okay, so I'm gonna just take this back though. Disable it, and then I like to make it simple here. So like now we have this chart, we have created two charts, and another thing you can do is go to the analytics, and then you can do all sorts of things. I might do time series clustering or maybe other stuff. But one super easy stuff you want to try, you can try quickly is this correlation. You remember like we have five, or I mean, like there's like a six metrics, right? So, or metrics or variables. So retail and grocery and parks and the workplace and so on. Are these correlated? For example, I can see, for example, retail and maybe parks probably like will have a similar trend, meaning like when the increase in the retail, when we see it, then probably the movement in parks also increase. Same thing, the transit, probably in the same way, but maybe the grocery is different because grocery is always, people have to go. And the workplace probably significantly went down. So maybe compared to grocery might have the opposite direction. So those are something called correlation. We can quickly find the correlation for each combination of these variables. So that's where you can do under the analytics. So select the correlation and the variable columns. And I'm going to select these 6 columns of variables or measures, whatever you want to call it. And then I want to see find out, how they're related to each other, right? So click OK, and I'm going to click on round bottom. And then it calculated the correlation value. Okay, so correlation value is a correlation coefficient is -1, ranging from -1 to 1. 1 is the most strongest positive correlation, which means one variable's value goes up, and the other variable's value also goes up in a kind of the same rate. And the -1 is the opposite, the negative, but most strongest negative correlation. So one variable value goes up, then the other variable value goes down. Okay, so that's a kind of negative relationship, but it can be very strong when you have -1. And in the between is the middle is 0. When you have 0, that means there's no relationship. Like one goes up, and the other one goes down, one goes up, in either way, and then you can't see any relationship between those two variables. Okay, so if I go to scatter matrix, it might give you a better idea. So for example, this is I think recreation, and then this one, there are a lot of text, so like I can't even see it, like whatever that is. So this one is a negative, so one goes up and then the other one goes down. For example, something like this, the one goes up, the other one goes up. So that's kind of like a visual way of expressing the correlation. But this under the correlation tab, you can quickly see, for example, here, this says correlation is minus 0.1, sorry, 0.9. So like I said, -1 is the strongest negative correlation. So that means this is very strong correlation. So what that means, like for increase in residential, can when we see increase in residential, we will see decrease in the workplace. So these two measures, move the opposite way, but it's very strong. So okay, so this is kind of interesting. I mean, sort of like a common sense because residential and people moving more in the residential than people moving less in the workplace because they don't go to work, right? So that makes sense. And another one here is a retail and a transit. This is 0.74, so it's very strong. Not strongest, but it's pretty strong. So retail and the transit is kind of going the same way. So yeah, people don't take transit, and therefore people don't even go to retail. Makes sense. And then another way to see is under the significance. So this one, the size shows the strength of the correlation. So the bigger is a strong correlation, smaller is a small correlation. I mean, like a weak correlation. Okay, and then the color is blue is negative, the red is positive. When you have something like a gray, that means not significant. It is doing a t-test or a statistical test or hypothesis test, and then gives you this like a p-value. P-value is if, as a guideline, if it's small, like less than 5% or 1% or something like that, then it's considered as significant. If you have p-value greater than 5% or 10% or something like that, 5% means 0.05, by the way, then it's not considered significant. So it might have some kind of relationship, but it's too weak, and then it can be considered as just a random, randomly observed correlation or some relationship. Okay, so in simple word, you can kind of like discard like a gray one, and you want to focus on the one that has a color. Okay, and from here too, like you can see, like residential and workplace has a strong correlation. Therefore, like a circle is relatively bigger, and the p-value is 0.00, probably the value that is close to 0. Okay, so another tab I like personally, my favorite is this one. So this is like every single combination. Each row shows every single combination of the measure. And then there's a correlation value. So from here, the biggest correlation, positive correlation value is 0.73. So that's a retail and a transit. And then biggest negative correlation is 0.91, minus 0.91 is workplace and residential. So basically, we are looking at the same information, but presented in three different ways. Okay, so we got the correlation, like we start understanding this relationship, that's cool, and you can do all other things. But let's move on to the next topic, which is to create the dashboard. I think that's what the next topic. No, that's not the next topic. So let's parameterize the SQL query before creating the dashboard. Okay. Oh, thanks God. I can just look at the slide. Okay. Here, so we created the SQL query, create query, and that was super simple. But we can parameterize this SQL query. Why we want to parameterize? Well, by parameterizing it, then you can expose the parameter to yourself, also other people that you end up like sharing this chart, or later like we're going to create dashboard, so you might want to share the dashboard with others, and then you can expose the parameter to them, so then they can change those parameter value, dynamically update the SQL query, and then run that query against the Google BigQuery. That's what we want to do here. So click on this data source, this token, to open the SQL query editor here. And then remember, like we created this like a Tokyo and Kyoto sub-region condition. Well, we can parameterize. We can make this dynamic instead of like a kind of like a hard coding this Tokyo and Kyoto. Okay, so how we do it? Here's a parameter button. When you click on it, and the parameter pane shows opens right hand side. There's no parameter at this point. Okay, because we don't have any parameter here. But you can create the parameter. So like if I go to set up parameters, Okay. And then actually I have already created it. So this one, left-hand side prefecture. If I didn't, then I can click on this create new parameter to create it. So this parameter, what is doing here? So it's called prefecture. This is a kind of a name that you want to use inside of when you reference inside a SQL query. And then display as, this is a parameter, kind of like a display name, end up like showing here when it's shown here. And the data type is a character because of prefecture name. So that has to be character, not numeric. And input type, I want to show like a list of values or drop down. Okay. And set all values when no value is selected or checkbox. Okay. So that's fine. And then here, list of values, there are two ways. If you know the value, let's say like you have only 2 or 3, you can just type in. But most of the time, you want to actually get the data dynamically from the data itself. So in that case, you can select this get value from data frame. And I have already created a data frame called prefecture list. Okay. You can actually use the data frame that you're working on as well. So same data frame, you can get that too. But I already created another one. So whatever the data frame is convenient. And you can set the step, whatever the step, I mean, like a last step or like particular step, because sometimes when you start summarizing the data, joining the data format can be changed. So you can change, specify which step of the data you're talking about. And then select the column, which column is this? So in this case, I have the prefecture column and then show the value and the display name, both of them the same way. So like I'm gonna use the same column for both. And then I don't check the default. So default, I want to check the default as all values. So in this case, I'm gonna make it as is. And then like I can click on the save button once I'm fine with it and close it. And then what it's gonna do here. So I wanna make this area to be dynamic. So I'm gonna just remove this Tokyo and Kyoto. And what I wanna do is I wanna type @mark. Once you type @mark, it will show you all the parameters you have created. In this case, I have only prefecture parameter, so I have only one option. And just click on the return key to select that prefecture. So @mark, this is like a curly bracket and a parameter name, curly bracket ending. And that's how you can reference the parameter in a SQL query. Not just SQL query, if you can actually reference this in a filter or calculation, all the places in Exploratory. Okay, so let's see what this is going to do. So here, I'm going to click on this refresh parameter button to refresh. So what happens is it check the SQL query and find any parameter references. And if any, then it will show you that parameter right here automatically. Okay. So now like I have the prefecture parameter. And then let's say, hey, what's going on with Tokyo? Okay. And then maybe Kyoto and maybe Osaka and 3 prefectures. And I click on run button. And then it will basically, replace this one to be Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, and send the SQL query to BigQuery and have it take care of it and then get that data. Okay, so now I have this data here. Okay, so another thing though, sometimes, when I want to click on this X button and it says all. So if sometimes like some people don't want to even select anything, that case you'd expect all the data come back, right? Not just null or like no data, because hey, give me all data instead of like specifying all the values. So if I click run button here at this point, and what's going to happen is actually you get no data because in this case, this parameter returns the NA or null in a SQL query language. Then it's NA is already, I removed it here. So basically this query doesn't work. So what you can do to make it return all the rows is use this function called if, this is a SQL function. And if bracket, this parameter prefecture is null, then return true. Okay. So that means, so this if function is like first condition, second is the condition is true, and what do? It return true. And next one is when the condition is false, what do? And if That case, I want that to use this subregion 1 in at prefecture parameter. Okay, so now I want to make sure the ending bracket here is okay. So like, because I started with if function, so I gotta close this function. Okay, I see the sign here, so it looks like it's closed. Okay. So in this case, that if I click run button, okay, either way, this run button on that, this parameter run button. So now I didn't select anything, and that means this one is not null. So this is false. So therefore, this part of the condition is used. If I select, for example, one of the parameter and then click run, what is going to happen is now this is not null. This is not null. So therefore, this part is used, right? And then if I select nothing and then run it, and then I think I said something wrong in just a few minutes ago. So this case is null. So this is true. So therefore, the true came back. So what that means, it's this condition is always true. So that's why like all the value came back. Okay. There's one thing we got to be careful. I sometimes often make this mistake. Let's say like if I select the Tokyo and then Kyoto, right? And if I click on run button, and I get this error message, and it's weird error message here. What it's essentially saying is right now, this parameter prefecture is saying Tokyo, Kyoto. And that is not null. So like I would expect this part of the condition to be used. But in this one, right here, what it's doing is this part is kind of replaced like this. And this breaks it because like this one, it's like what? It's like a Tokyo, Kyoto. So it's like if function thinks this Tokyo is the condition or something. So this whole thing it just gets broken. So what you could do is basically, if we have like a bracket starting and ending like this, then inside this bracket is null or not, right? So you can actually use this way and then put the parameter back. Okay, so inside this bracket, I have the parameter. So now it can be Tokyo, it can be null, it can be Tokyo, Kyoto. Either way, it's always this bracket can give the value to be evaluated with this is null statement. And then if it's null, then true is going to be returned. So this whole sentence, this false row is always like a true condition. If it's false, that means there is some value, either 1 or 2 or more, then this part is going to be used. That's what we wanted. Okay, so in this case now, open the parameters, and we have Tokyo and Kyoto, click run button, and hopefully Tokyo and Kyoto data come back. All right, it seems like coming back. So that's cool. And then like if I can select all the values, then I don't have to enter anything. And then I get all the values. And then here it is. So we have 24,000 rows. And then at this point, I'm going to click on the update button. And then this just is going to download the entire row, 24,722 rows. Now it's coming back. Okay, I'm going to sort this chart from the highest to the lowest. And the cool thing here is now I can open this parameter right-hand side. So I don't even have to open the SQL editor or data import dialog. I can open inside of this chart view or summary view or any view, open the parameter dialog. And then I can select these, whatever the prefectures. And then let's say Aichi, Tokyo, I want to compare these two. And then I can do that. What happened, this going back to the Google BigQuery, dynamically get that data, whatever the data that matches with this condition. And then here it is. We have that in the chart. And the same thing, if I open that another chart, now like I'm seeing Aichi and Tokyo, these two area. Okay, so that's a parameterizing SQL query. Then the next topic is creating the dashboard. Okay, so go to left-hand side. Under the reports, now like I can create a dashboard, a note, and all sorts of things. So let's create a dashboard as a sample here. So this is Japan mobility dashboard or something. And then once it's created, so this is a dashboard editor UI. And I'm going to start throwing these charts that we have just created. So mobility Japan under the chart, and then I can select, for example, like this line chart, and then maybe here, or what happened? And then another chart, maybe like I'm going to select this another chart, or instead of side by side, I want to create like kind of a what do you call it, like on top of each other. In that case, I can click on this plus button, which is add row, and then add below. So now I have created a section underneath, and then I'm going to just kind of change that sort of like the height. And then I want to move this one by drag and drop. So drag and drop. Now I have a chart at the top or another chart at the bottom. I can keep adding another chart, for example, here under the analytics. You remember like we created the analytics. So I can bring in this, for example, correlation heat map and so on. So you can do all sorts of things, but I'm going to just keep those two charts for now and then click on run button. And then like I have, what is this? Okay, so that was, I think it was somehow it's been some kind of image from the previous, before the seminar I was creating. So it's kind of like a cache or something. But anyway, so these are the charts that we have created in the seminar. And then like, obviously there are 49 prefectures, so like 49 lines and 49 bars. And then at this point, I can click on, again, the parameter. And this is like a dashboard, right? So like even from the dashboard, I can select these, change the parameter values. What it's going to do is it change the SQL query and then pass that to Google BigQuery and then get that data. Okay. Then once you have the dashboard, the next thing you want to do is you want to publish it so that you can share with others, or you can run the SQL query at the Exploratory server. Okay. So I'm going to just go with this and then publish. And then note that this is a private mode. So if I publish this, and only the person I explicitly invite can open this chart. But if I don't have to worry about it, I can uncheck it. And then either way, for this chart, because the data is a public data anyway. And then anyway, so like I'm publishing it. And what is going to happen is once it's published, and it will assign this URL link, unique URL. And then I can click on this, either copy and paste or click on this open in browser. And here it is. So now I'm basically seeing the same dashboard in the web browser at this point. Okay. So the dashboard is published, and I can start inviting other folks if I like. At this point, like I'm gonna keep it to myself. But another thing I like to do is, number one is scheduling. So you can schedule this so that you can, let's say like run every 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And then, so you always see the latest of the data. So for example, if I click on schedule button, and then this is like every day. Okay. And then let's say, you know what, like I want to just run at 6 o'clock in the morning. Time zone. I live in the West Coast in the United States, so US Pacific is cool. And another thing is this subscribe notification email. So once you do this, then once this runs, let's say that tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, when this report is done, then at the server, it takes a snapshot that's a kind of thumbnail image, that, and then embed that in the email and send it to you. So you can, 6 o'clock or whatever whenever this job is done, then you will receive the notification. And then you can see, let me show you the example, what I'm talking about here. Oops, sorry about that. What's going on here? Okay. You will receive an email like this. And then you can see, what is the numbers, how the chart is looking. And if you're interested in, finding more, you can click on this open button to open the dashboard in the web browser. So either way. Okay. And another thing is now, I'm not going to schedule this for now here. And then instead, what I want to do is there's a parameter button. So this is where things come more interesting, because I can share this with my teammates, right, and have them interact with this dashboard. They might not be, they might not be interested in all those like 49 prefectures. They're interested in only like Tokyo and Hokkaido, for example, the particular regions. So in that case, imagine like pretending like I'm that person, and then open this, and I'm going to just click on the parameter button, and I can turn on this like use parameter button. This makes this dashboard to be kind of like an interactive mode, which means it assigns the instance of the server. And then from here, I can select. So let's say, for example, Tokyo, maybe Kyoto, and Osaka, maybe Hiroshima, for different regions. And I can click on run button. What is happening here is that at the server, it dynamically changes the SQL query, pass the SQL query to the Google BigQuery, and they have it, process the data, get the data, and return the data. I mean, import that, download the data to Exploratory server. And then in this demo, I didn't create any data wrangling, but if you had like a data wrangling, meaning like cleaning up, transforming that data, it runs all the data wrangling steps and then generate the chart. In this case, I have only 2, but if you have like 8, you regenerate all the charts that are related to that data, and then give you the final output. And then if you subscribe, then this is the image. Sorry, this is like an interactive mode, so like nothing to do with subscribe. But if this is a schedule, then it will capture this snapshot. But in this case, so basically like users or like other folks can interact with the dashboard. In this case, a filter, you can use that. In this case, parameterize SQL query. So like SQL query is the one who's updated. You can have the parameter at the filter step or calculation step, wherever that could be. Okay. So now that's the interactive mode. And I think that's pretty much it. Yes. Okay. So one thing though, before closing, wanted to show you is why the exploratory server can access the BigQuery. Because so you have the exploratory desktop, which is the bottom, right? And then you created the chart. You can publish not just the dashboard, note or chart itself, or data itself as well. But you create the OOs, right? Like when you use a BigQuery. So it captures the information. When you publish, you publish the OAuth information at the exploratory server as well. Okay, so that means when you schedule at the server or you interact at the server, you use the same OAuth token and you go to the BigQuery and then get that data. So therefore, like you don't have to do extra configuration at the server. You just publish, and then now you can schedule or interact with that dashboard right away. Okay, that's that. And I think that's pretty much it. And the one thing though, it's end, but if you want to know more about this topic, so you go to exploratory page, okay, and homepage, and under the Learn menu, and then there's a how-to tutorials. And then here, left-hand side, there's a BigQuery. So you can click on the BigQuery, and then it will show you like BigQuery related information. So you might be interested in. Okay. And I think that's it for today. So with that, wait a second. Okay, so today basically I cover how you can start connecting to the BigQuery and then get the data, and then not only that, like what you can do in Exploratory with the data. Not necessarily with the BigQuery data, you can do that with any data from like other databases or other cloud application or local files and so on. Okay, so that's it for today. And then next seminar next week is I'm planning to do the survey data analysis, the same time on Wednesday next week. Okay, and then you want to see the future as online seminars or the past recording. You can go to the Learn under the online under the menu. You can find online seminar, and then you can find any information related to online seminar. Okay, so that's it for today. And with that, I like to open for the question session, Q&A session.